A local doctor travels more than 6,000 miles into a war zone.
I learned a lot about shrapnel injury.
Tonight, he shares his story after treating those wounded in the Israel-Hamas war.
It was the most incredible thing in my life.
A concerning trend, stolen tow trucks being used to steal brand new cars.
Hook it up, pick it up, and just go.
Why some say this scheme may be more elaborate than previously believed.
And it's just getting bigger now.
Paying taxes on a tax-free college savings plan, that could be the reality for some Maryland families. Why they might be on the hook for thousands of dollars.
I mean, if that's their intent, that would be pretty terrible.
Keep that umbrella handy. Our next weather maker is a soaker. Wyatt Everhart is breaking down the heavy rain coming our way hour by hour.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
As people continue to make their way home from the holidays, we are keeping an eye on some potential hazards that could impact their trip. We're monitoring road conditions right now. As you can see, some rain and fog starting to build up at this hour. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Mary Bubala. Those foggy conditions impacting one of the busiest days of the year at BWI. FlightAware shows at least 43 flights have been delayed over the past 4 hours. Storms moving up the Atlantic coast are also delaying more than 100 flights out of the Atlanta area and Miami area. Meteorologist Wyatt Everhart has our forecast as part of the system that is heading our way. Wyatt?
Mary, it is kind of ugly out there, not just across Maryland, but much of the eastern seaboard and also some points west with the active weather. So, yeah, more rain, more fog, more mist overnight tonight. We're tracking it with HD radar. Quite a bit of heavy rain is now edging in out of the west and now crossing closer and closer into Baltimore itself. We also have a tremendous amount of rain down here into the central part of North Carolina. It's going to make a run north up the 95 corridor into Baltimore, D.C. as we go into the day tomorrow. So another inch plus of rain possible on top of the rain we've already had. Maybe some spots get another inch and a half. That's a lot of rain. Also dealing with fog tonight. Visibility is very impaired as you go further west of Baltimore right now. So mist, drizzle, rain overnight. Still keeping the mild temps around at least, but that's about the only silver lining. We'll talk more about when the whole thing clears out of here and what the pattern does for the new year. That's coming up.
Wyatt, thank you. We will continue to track this system throughout the night as it could impact your morning commute. Wake up with meteorologist Justin Chambers. He'll have the latest on Fox 45 Morning News starting at 4:30 a.m. And you can always have the forecast right at your fingertips. Download the Fox 45 weather app by searching for WBFF in your app store. Shocking footage capturing the moment a stolen tow truck was used to pull a car right from the lot of a Baltimore County car dealership. It is part of an alarming trend surrounding stolen tow trucks, at least 4 in the past few weeks across the Baltimore area. But how do thieves know which cars to go after at a specific dealership? Fox 45's Vincent Hill digs into the trend and calls for accountability from top prosecutors.
Yeah, not only are tow trucks being stolen, but they're being used to steal more cars, and some are calling it organized.
He's pulling off.
A tow truck at an Acura dealer in the middle of the night.
At 11:19, that's when he went into the dealership. 11:20, he was going out the dealership.
In tow, a 2024 Acura SUV. Only one problem, the Acura stolen, using a stolen tow truck.
So he's going up to Haven Street, and you can see him trying to pull the camera down at the time he's driving.
The suspect captured on camera, just the latest of what Ron Rucker calls a troubling trend.
Stealing trucks and going to take other trucks, that's a rare. And it's just getting bigger now.
Last week, Fox 45 showed you this video of a tow truck stolen near Southwestern Boulevard.
I saw it, my tow truck was coming out from a parking lot. I called 911.
And this one.
He called me at 6:45 this morning. So, serious?
Just down the street.
There's 2 other tow trucks around the corner stolen. There's a couple of them a couple weeks ago stolen.
Rucker says the suspect who stole his truck to target the Acura dealership knew exactly what vehicle to steal.
And then you also got to know what cars you can tow without the dollies just to pick up. Because see, a lot of them Acuras are all-wheel drives. Some of them you could pick up and just roll with. Some of them you have to put those wheels on the back, which take another 2-3 minutes to put on. So he knew which ones he was grabbing.
City State's Attorney Ivan Bates and Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy calling the number of stolen vehicles across the state organized.
A lot of what we're seeing now
sits just a few miles north of the Gaza Strip.
We only saw the patients that came out of Gaza. We were 10 kilometers away from Gaza, and we treated soldiers and Palestinians. Those are the only people we treated.
The physician describing what it was like working in the midst of a war.
The first day was a little bit scary because, you know, it's a constant boom that you hear. It's like July 4th nonstop, so it's a constant boom that you're hearing.
Photos from what he called 2 weeks in the foxhole, providing only a small glimpse of what his trauma shifts looked like.
Day one, I treated my first soldier, and, you know, I walk into a trauma room with Arab physicians, Russian physicians, Israeli physicians, all together, but we all spoke the common language of trauma.
That trauma bay, according to Frankel, sits inside a bomb shelter where he and a team of doctors treated many patients.
Some of the injuries are light, some of them unfortunately were very, very harsh injuries, and some of them didn't make it. So the range was huge.
But treating trauma from a war zone, a stark contrast to the patients he sees in Baltimore.
I've been doing this for 20 years. In my life, I've never seen shrapnel injuries. I've never seen an RPG rocket. I've never seen an RPG rocket or anti-missile rocket hit a person or hit a building and then hit a person.
A learning experience even for a seasoned trauma doctor.
I learned a lot about shrapnel injury, and I feel very proficient now in shrapnel injury, unfortunately.
Despite the very real danger of being in the region, Frankel said it was faith, not fear, on his mind.
I was never worried about it because I didn't think God was going to make me travel 6,000 miles to get killed over there.
And as the war continues thousands of miles away, this physician says he'd go back in a heartbeat.
I have a bag packed. I'm ready.
In Baltimore, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Baltimore City Councilwoman Odette Ramos is weighing in on recent anti-Semitic vandalism in Hampton after two of the homeowners taking part in the Miracle on 34th Street display say they found smashed watermelons in their yards and on their holiday displays. Watermelons are a symbol of Palestinian solidarity. Ramos says she spent time with families impacted by the vandalism, noting there's been a rise in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents in Hampton this year. She added there's no place for hate in Baltimore. Now, Ramos was one of 4 council members who abstained from voting on a resolution condemning anti-Semitism this month, saying the resolution failed to acknowledge the rise in Islamophobia as well. The council members who abstained later proposed their own resolution condemning hate in all forms while calling for a ceasefire in Israel. That resolution did not get enough support from the council to pass. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, frustrated Maryland 529 families say they're navigating another hurdle with their college savings accounts, why they may owe thousands of dollars in taxes after a state error. 2 months after the Morgan State University mass shooting, students are still feeling the trauma from that night, how the university has ramped up its security in the week since October 3rd. And after a year clouded in controversy, some say the mayor's flagship violence intervention program enters 2024 with an uncertain future. Fox 45 News looks into where the Safe Streets program stands heading into the new year. We are following some breaking news out of South Baltimore. Police say a 13-year-old was shot just after 6 tonight along Annabelle Avenue in Brooklyn. Police say the injuries are non-life-threatening and the boy was taken to a local hospital. This is an ongoing investigation. Anybody with information about the shooting of this 13-year-old asked to call Metro Crime Stoppers. Well, that shooting happening just a few blocks from the Brooklyn Day mass shooting site in July, in which 15 young people were shot. Many groups face criticism for their handling of the mass shooting, including the Safe Streets program. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost takes us through the questions for a program still without a full-time leader.
2023 began when LifeBridge Health and Catholic Charities, the two nonprofits, officially started overseeing the operations of the 10 Safe Streets sites. Also in January, Fox 45 News threatening legal action against Baltimore City Hall in order to get public records about the Safe Streets program. With the 10 sites, Safe Streets is a cornerstone of Mayor Brandon Scott's crime-fighting strategy.
He shared with me probably about a couple weeks before he was murdered
Then,
that he was looking to be hired by Safe Street.
In May, a family coming forward frustrated with the Safe Streets program after the death of their loved one, Damon Scroggins, in 2019.
Has your view of the Safe Streets program changed throughout this?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Yes. My belief is that our city government is financing a criminal enterprise. I believe that within my heart. Our city government is so invested in it that it's turning a blind eye to what it really is.
Later that month, another shakeup with Safe Streets. The Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or MONSE, the city agency overseeing the program, the director, Shantae Jackson, suddenly announced she was leaving. And Jackson refused to talk about why or where she was going.
Can you say where you plan to go?
Let me stop right here.
Okay.
Never, ever will I prioritize any news about me over top of news about our young people.
That's why I didn't ask during the press
conference. So we can save that question for a time when I'm ready to share it. Thank you.
Then in July, a celebration turned into tragedy. 30 people shot during the Brooklyn Day block party, 2 of them killed. Hours before the first bullets started flying, Safe Streets workers were at the party. Those violence interrupters completing mediations, but BPD was never notified.
Is it part of the Safe Streets protocol to relay that information to BPD if there is a potential threat that's possible at a large gathering like this?
I don't know that Safe Streets would relay that. I would say there is some level of communication about any incidents that are outside of their purview.
This afternoon, the committee will have a hearing.
And during oversight hearing, City Council took issue with that as well. Later, we pressed the mayor on when policy changes might come.
When can we expect a potential change to that policy?
You can expect, as we do this entire review, top to bottom from every agency, all of those policy changes will be a part of that. So once we complete that, which is going to be very expansive and exhaustive, we'll get back to everyone about that public.
No timeline?
We are not going to give you a timeline on something this important.
Fast forward to October, calls intensify for an audit of MONSE and Safe Streets.
I'm quite concerned that we don't know how money is being spent. We don't know where the money is going.
Just a few weeks later, the FBI executing a search warrant at the Bel Air Edison Safe Streets site in the early morning hours of October 26th, along with the homes of 2 employees. The FBI not saying much about the probe, but sources close to it tell Fox 45 News the investigation could be connected to possible Black Guerrilla Family or BGF gang affiliation. Since then, the door locked at the site along Bel Air Road and activity paused.
Have a good day.
Fox 45 News later learning the site supervisor, David Caldwell, on unpaid leave after he was charged with having ammunition in his home illegally. Caldwell slated to face trial on January 3rd. Another employee at the time, Lamont Crooks, had items removed from his home by law enforcement. That material later returned to LifeBridge Health. Crooks no longer works for Safe Streets, but we uncovered Crooks' criminal past, including being involved in a 2010 federal investigation where agents named Crooks as the heroin source for the BGF. That history leading to questions about how employees are vetted.
So does gang affiliation factor into that screening process?
There's a screening process with law enforcement that considers whether someone should be hired or not.
Mayor Brandon Scott and LifeBridge Health pointing to living classrooms. Since they were the nonprofit managing the Safe Street site at the time Crooks was hired. The Bel-Air Edison site remains inactive. LifeBridge Health says it's not clear when it will reopen. Mayor Scott's biggest challenger in the upcoming mayoral election, former Mayor Sheila Dixon. Dixon first brought Safe Streets to Baltimore, but now
I think Safe Streets needs to be investigated.
Meanwhile, the Safe Streets program remains operational. Monsey still doesn't have a permanent leader, and the federal investigation remains open. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And Fox 45 News has been investigating the Safe Streets program for years. Head to foxbaltimore.com for our complete coverage. D.C. police are searching for a suspect in a deadly shooting outside a metro station this morning. It happened outside the L'Enfant Plaza station around 4:30. Police say they found the victim at a bus stop and rushed him to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. You can see the suspect's photo on the right there. Police say he's about 5'6", wearing dark clothing at the time of the shooting. A San Francisco statement last night from the Ravens launched them into the NFL's top spot. How they pulled it off and why social media was buzzing afterwards.
All right, we've got some thick clouds out there, no question about that. Some are very, very low to the ground, so mist, fog, action on the radar. It is going to be one wet night out there and kind of a mess to start your Wednesday around here. So murky conditions continue. More wet weather making its run up the 95 corridor. We'll talk about when the rain finally gets out of here. That's coming up.
Earlier tonight, there wasn't much to see. We couldn't see the stadium. Now we can because of the fog. It's looking great out there with its holiday colors. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Our guys work hard and they compete hard, and you know, everybody wants to be respected. So, but there's one way to be respected, and that's to go out there and earn that.
And they sure did. The Ravens saved their best game for Christmas night, as Coach Harbaugh says the team earned their respect last night. The defense led the way against San Francisco, hauling in 5 interceptions. It's the 5th straight win for the Ravens, who now have the best record in the NFL at 12-3. And there may be a new MVP favorite. Morgan adds it. We'll have more on that coming up in about 30 minutes. And Ravens fans are riding high right now. Adrienne sent us this picture of her game day outfit, celebrating a win with her family and friends last night. #1, I love it. Be sure to share your favorite Purple Pride photos and videos through the Chime In app at foxbaltimore.com and on the FOX45 app, WBFF. Well, paying taxes on a tax-free college savings program, the latest 529 twist for some Maryland parents. Morgan State University still recovering after a mass shooting months ago. The campus security changes now in place.
Everything has finally settled down, and there's kind of one last, twist of the knife into us that they're trying to do.
I can't believe it, but there is more headache tonight for Maryland 529 account holders, learning they may actually have to pay taxes on the money returned to their accounts after what 529 officials call an interest calculation error. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor pushes lawmakers for a response as parents shared their frustration.
Yeah, the treasurer's office tells me at least 150 accounts are impacted. It is a devastating case of deja vu for these families that thought this year-long financial battle that they had been facing was finally over.
A promise to pay back Maryland families whose college savings accounts were slashed without warning in 2022 made many parents believe the fight had been won.
I am just grateful that he did the right thing and honored our contracts.
But for those with complicated cases who were forced to file claims with the state treasurer's office, they now fear another fight has just begun.
We thought we're at the end of the line now. Everything has finally settled down, and there's kind of one last, twist of the knife into us that they're trying to do.
Ken Sachs, among those receiving his long-awaited settlement offer this month, the state granting Sachs nearly $10,000 in interest earnings that they now say shouldn't have been taken from his account in the first place.
It was pretty much the number I was expecting.
Until further review of the fine print revealing the unexpected tax considerations on his tax-free investment.
The crux of the plan was that it was a tax-free a tax-free plan. I mean, if that's their intent, that would be pretty terrible.
Not only would it shortchange Sachs's settlement,
$3,000 pretty much right off the top.
taxing these, in many cases, large payouts will push people into another tax bracket, causing a ripple effect of further financial consequences.
Your income goes up by the amount of the earnings. So there's certain phase outs, child tax credits, and then also if you're applying for financial aid, for FAFSA forms, that now goes in as interest. And it's going to be a lump sum payment.
Potentially preventing parents from securing financial aid or interest-free loans.
It would have significant repercussions.
Other claimants sounding off on social media. One writing, quote, "I think we need some serious answers on treating this as a taxable event. If that is the case, then I will file another claim so they can pay my taxes on this money. This is absolutely ridiculous." Another writing, "This is a bad turn of events. I think we need clarification, media attention, and a response from the state legislators who wanted parents to be made whole by a claims process." The state treasurer's office confirming while the payouts are exempt from state and local taxes, lawmakers did not make an exemption for federal taxes. Today, Fox 45 reaching out to the dozens of lawmakers who backed the Maryland 529 legislation, asking, is it fair to tax funds Maryland families invested in a tax-free plan? And how will you address this issue? As of News Time tonight, no response, even from lawmakers who took the reins in calling for residents to be fully reimbursed earlier this year.
We should not wait another day before we make these families whole.
Back in January, Senator Mary Washington issuing a statement calling on the state attorney general to investigate the embattled college trust.
I think we should pay everybody, pay everything.
Fox 45 initially asking Washington for a response to the new tax troubles on December 15th and again today, but Washington says she has no comment. Now, I also reached out to the state treasurer's office again today, asking if they had really explored every possibility that could prevent these settlements from being federally taxed. As of News Time tonight, though, I have not heard back. In the newsroom, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Former 529 director Anthony Savia resigned from the post last month amid some of those ongoing concerns. Savia's last day was November 30th, marking just over a year with the agency. The treasurer's office confirmed Savia's resignation to Fox 45, but declined to comment why he stepped down. 2023 marked a grim milestone for Morgan State University. 2 shooters opened fire on campus in October, injuring 5 people. The mass shooting and manhunt for those 2 suspects prompted the university to cancel its homecoming and triggered talks to build a wall around the public campus. Alexa Ashwell takes us back to that night and the changes now in place as a result.
October 3rd, 2023, Northeast Baltimore. Morgan State University had just concluded its homecoming coronation when suddenly gunshots.
It was just like a ton of shots in a row, and then it stopped, and then more shots in a row.
The sound of gunfire sends the campus into chaos. Students, faculty, and alumni begin running for their lives and taking cover wherever possible.
I saw people crying. I saw people on the floor. I saw people just, having minor panic attacks.
Police respond and sweep the campus. 5 people are found shot outside Thurgood Marshall Hall, including 4 students. Thankfully, all survive, but a shooter nowhere to be found. In the days that follow, Baltimore police released surveillance video of persons of interest, announce a reward, and then release these clear images of the 2 believed shooters. And in an unprecedented move, the university cancels all homecoming events and activities, later announcing enhanced security measures and revealing talks of building a wall to enclose the public campus.
Unfortunately, going forward, Morgan State University will have to look at closing even more significantly ingress and egress opportunities to the campus. We are an open campus in an urban environment, and we now are making plans, as you heard from the chief, to basically now close that.
Days later, a break in the case. On October 13th, investigators announced a 17-year-old had been taken into custody and an arrest warrant issued for 18-year-old Javon Williams. The U.S. Marshals Service joining the search.
This individual actually has an extensive criminal history.
And fugitive Williams is featured on Maryland's Most Wanted. Our show uncovering at the time of the mass shooting, Williams was already wanted and had been identified as a member of Washington, D.C.'s notorious Kennedy Street crew. Officials in D.C. announcing the federal indictment months before the shooting. In this document, Williams is named for his alleged role in the gang's drug trafficking operation. The gang accused of selling fentanyl and crack, using firearms to protect territory, and concealing their proceeds using shell businesses and other methods of laundering.
It is not just the danger of the drugs being peddled, it is also the money and firearms associated with these drug operations. They combine to form a toxic mix for fueling violence.
But during this announcement, it was unclear why Williams was still unaccounted for. A deeper dive into court records shows he had been arrested on gun charges months before this announcement. A copy of a search warrant shows back in January he was one of 9 people charged after being found inside of a home in D.C. with nearly a dozen firearms. Any idea why he was on the street in the first place?
So in this case, the investigation was ongoing.
Williams somehow managing to elude law enforcement and still get his hands on a gun and allegedly open fire on MSU's campus months later. As investigators work to connect the dots, finally, another break in the case. After being featured on Maryland's Most Wanted, investigators say they received several tips that Williams was not only still in D.C., but also committing armed robberies and carjackings. Investigators finally tracking down the suspect November 17th after they say he and 2 other suspects went on a crime spree in D.C. Williams was taken into custody after a brief pursuit.
He has absolute complete disregard for public safety.
Back on Morgan State University's campus, the Morgan community uniting and together moving forward, but never forgetting October 3rd, 2023. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
As 2023 winds down, Baltimore appears on pace to fall below 300 homicides for the first time in 9 years. As of today, the city has seen 258 murders and 625 non-fatal shootings. Mayor Brandon Scott appeared on CNN this weekend to talk about what he thinks is fueling the drop in gun crime this year.
I created the first ever comprehensive violence reduction plan for Baltimore City, bringing everybody together, but also putting an emphasis on the ecosystem, creating a community violence intervention ecosystem, treating violence like a public health crisis, focusing our police on those who are most at risk of being a victim and the perpetrator of violence through our group violence reduction strategy, bringing in all of our partners between our federal partners, our state's attorney, our U.S. attorney, but most importantly, the community. And that's how we're doing it, and doing it the right way.
Mayor Scott mentioned the partnerships with City State's Attorney Ivan Bates and U.S. Attorney for Maryland Eric Barron. They all teamed up earlier this year. Homicides are down 20% and non-fatal shootings are down 9% since then. Some argue that tough on crime policies from Bates and Barron are having more of an impact on crime than Mayor Scott's message.
The mayor, smart politically, will take credit for this stuff because when you're running for re-election and numbers are going down, you want to hang a star on it. With Ivan Bates in office now, people realize he's not playing. And he's going to do whatever it can to get people prosecuted and held accountable.
Despite the drop in gun violence, Fox 45 News has heard from concerned residents at a public safety town hall just last week saying they are still concerned about feeling safe in their own neighborhoods.
I've talked to parents who are afraid to send their kids to school because their classmates are carjacking and carrying guns. So parents need to be held accountable as well.
I have a half dozen neighbors who live on my street who have been physically assaulted over the past 18 months, and 2/3 of those assaults have occurred in broad daylight. So what I'm interested in learning is, what are you going to do tomorrow?
Well, you can watch our Your Voice, Your Future town hall in its entirety right now at foxbaltimore.com. The U.S. and China are taking their rivalry to space more than 50 years after the initial space race against the Soviets. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins looks into why the U.S. might be trailing in this race to the moon.
The U.S. and China taking their rivalry to outer space.
Space is a place
of extraordinary opportunity.
Vice President Kamala Harris outlining America's goals at the December National Space Council meeting.
The United States will return astronauts to the lunar surface. We will establish the first lunar base camp and the first station in lunar orbit.
The problem is China could get there first. The Chinese are rapidly advancing their space program, often catching American officials off guard.
New challenges have arisen, including from our strategic competitors.
The winner of the race would likely set the parameters for future lunar exploration. This includes mining resources on the lunar surface and establishing settlements. Both nations are using the moon as a step towards putting humans on Mars.
Right now, what we want to make sure is that China doesn't control space. We don't have to control it, right? We can share it, but we know that China doesn't share. China wants absolute control.
To advance their position, the United States is building an international lunar coalition, the Artemis Accords. 33 countries are now members.
Combining our resources, scientific capacity, and technical skill with that of our allies and partners around the world.
China creating a competing international coalition. Egypt, the latest country to join in early December, bringing the coalition to 9 countries, including Russia, the UAE, and South Africa.
NASA initially aiming to put astronauts back on the moon by late 2025, but a series of delays led the Government Accountability Office to conclude it likely won't happen until 2027. China's stated goals are to land on the moon before the end of the decade. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
Still ahead, one man is turning Baltimore streets into a sanctuary, one block at a time. His mission to run down every street in Baltimore and the stories he's sharing along the way.
I'm Wyatt Everhart. We are tracking lots of rain here on the radar, especially to the west and southwest of Baltimore and all the way down into North Carolina. We've got the rain train running tonight. We'll talk about that, some fog concerns, and some colder air for the new year. It's all coming up.